All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Brown Box. This is a Zoom edition. As you can see, we're not in the same room, but we're pretty close to each other. Chris has his box there. I'm
Mhm.
Ryan, Chris,
I'm Chris.
and we're gonna pull something out of the brown box. This is a thematic brown box. So,
Okay.
Chris, what do you got in that box?
I have Shaky. We're looking at some things about Neil Young, and we're having a couple shows about him. From this book, you really get a real sense of what a complicated character uh, Neil is, and that's probably goes without saying, because I, as I joked earlier, it could have been called Flaky instead of Shaky because
Yeah,
he is want to move on for
right.
different things, but you see sort of that kind of wanderlust in his music and in his life. And there's some hilarious anecdotes you read.
Yeah, I mean, like he would, he Crazy Horse was a band he played off and on with, like for pretty much since 1969, and in the mid 70s they got a new member because they had last time they were together, Danny Whitten had passed on. Uh, Frank San Pedro, I think his name is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was a new guitar player, and so they did it. They did an album, Zuma, which is a great record. They did a tour, and then after the tour, Neil just kind of bailed.
Yeah.
And then you have three guys in a band who no longer work and they're unemployed. So one of Sancho's friends, or a group of his friends, he ran with a pretty tough crowd. They were like, "You want us to take care of Neil? You want us to like bump him off?" You know what I mean? So it's like we could have lost him there in '76 or whatever,
They
but
still may be
yeah,
after him, you know.
they could be. Yeah, it's like it's just interesting to imagine at one time, but
Yeah.
that's like the most extreme example. But the book is great because it has like interviews with Neil, so they're kind of interspersed with facts, with the story, and it's a linear story
Right.
about, and it's fascinating because all the records were made differently. Um, he was always kind of just serving the music the entire time, hence why he would kind of jump around from different configurations. I mean, I can imagine, Crazy Horse within Crosby, Stills and Nash, like it's like he joined up with them and then he was gone, like or
Yeah.
Stephen Stills bailed in the middle of a tour.
Thank you.
um, it's a good read. He wrote two like autobiographies that kind of remind me of Dylan because they're not really linear at all. They're
Right.
just like he kind of just focuses on certain things. I think at one point he talks about like model trains and then cars. It's
Right.
just like
Right.
yeah,
I
but
think it's probably hard.
mhm.
Yeah, because that's Waging Heavy Peace.
Yep.
uh that does that. But it's just a good book, and you thought he was done for so long
Hmm.
ago, but what he can still deliver and his
Yeah.
will to deliver that is just very, very powerful. And you just kind of see the foundations of that in this book, and it kind of gets him going. You understand his motives, I think. Sort of why I recommend, for our brown box, part one,
I love it.
is this Shaky, because you start to get a feel for this person, and and if you read it during that time, he already had a long career here. So that's my brown box. And so if you read
Okay.
yours,
Yeah,
your
I'm gonna reach over here and try
okay.
and simulate. Oh, what do we have here? I
Oh,
don't know if I
yeah,
picked On the Beach. It's probably my favorite Neil album.
okay.
Um, but that can change in a week. But On the Beach, for one thing, it's got one of my favorite Neil songs, which is Ambulance Blues, which closes this album. And he came out and played that as an opener when I saw him a couple months ago at the Hollywood Bowl,
Yeah.
which was great. Like he came out and just starts the show with a deep cut. I mean, it is a deep cut. This album isn't it's not the most well-known Neil record, but it's got some great songs on it. He plays with a lot of different people, from David Crosby to Levon Helm to Rick Danko,
Yeah.
and it's great. I mean, it's this has a a collection of songs that were made under, I guess you could say, some heavy medication. So that's just a clean way of saying it. So I mean, it starts with "Walk On," which is a very optimistic kind of bright song. But then, as the sequence of the songs go, it's kind of gets a little more. I don't want to say depressing, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it gets definitely darker. I mean, "Walk On" is
Yeah,
one of my favorite songs of his.
yeah,
Where he sure showed these other colors, or is especially his ability to do kind of funky stuff or soulful things.
right.
And really, I mean, that's if you wanted to hear a soulful, poppy Neil Young tune with just a great riff,
Yeah,
that still delivers an emotional punch for a little tune. "Walk On"
uh-huh.
is one of my favorite Neil songs.
Yeah. It's a great starter. And then you have like three, I mean, you could say it's a blues album almost. It's got Revolution Blues, which was some might say could be from the point of view of Charles Manson. With the lyrics, it's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. David Crosby played on this, and he was getting freaked out because he thought it would like summon Manson, But I don't know if
They,
that's what happens when you do a lot of stuff. But Vampire Blues, which is his commentary on like the oil industry, and then of course Ambulance Blues, which is this like semi-autobiographical song, but it gets kind of surreal. Side two is like three songs. On the Beach Motion Pictures Ambulance Blues. It's one of my favorite sides of music ever. It's just so such a mood. Um, and that's kind of what this whole record is, and that's what part of the sequencing of a couple of records around this was called the Ditch Trilogy. So he made Harvest, and then as he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, "Harvest put me in the middle of the road, and then I just went towards the ditch." So he did a tour after Harvest where he didn't really play too many Harvest songs, and it was a pretty messed up tour because his whole band was they were getting paid a lot of money and they were getting messed up a lot, and they recorded Time Fades Away, which
yeah.
is and he put that out, and that's a live album with all new songs on it,
Yeah.
which is at that time it's a pretty big deal. He then records Tonight's the Night, and then he records this album, but this album came up before Tonight's the Night. Which
Right.
so he like put that, I mean, imagine that, like he put Tonight's the Night on the shelf, which is a great record,
Yeah.
a whole different kind of thing. He puts that on the shelf, puts this one out before that, and then he puts that one out later on. It's great. I mean, it really holds up, I think, and it's when I talk to people and they tell me, Harvest is their favorite Neil record, I say, "Have you heard On the Beach?"
Back then, you could you could find a lot of those middle period Neil Young, and vinyl back then,
Hmm.
there would just be almost like in the cutout bins or something
Yeah,
because it wasn't Harvest, and he'd have
yeah,
all these series of things. And nowadays, people looked at Tonight's the Night as this sort of pinnacle, but it's very,
hmm,
very, very, very dark album. Within this one, sets this frame that I'm gonna move into some longer pieces.
hmm,
Harvest, pretty self-contained, just song length wise, quicker things, and he could have done a whole career doing that and probably been more successful. Harvest got him in that conversation, but then to head towards the ditch
hmm,
and sort of rely on his musicality because his
yeah,
guitar playing is it's like a whole other musical life.
hmm,
He's a songwriter. He's this incredible lyricist that can capture so many lights of things. He does the
yeah,
most with the most common chords that any songwriter
yeah,
does. He can make
yeah,
the most simple melody work at 1,000%, the most mileage out of
hmm,
the simplest melodies. But then he's this very unusual guitar player because of these extended blues songs, especially when you get in that second side, that like you say, they're like a mood. It's almost like it's like a move, three movements of one piece. And I think maybe he was sort of discovering himself as this guitarist in an extended way. So I think they're both pretty groovy brown box ideas.
definitely. Read the book and listen to the record.
Yeah.
And,
At the same time. At the
yeah, yeah. And then read the book and listen to all the records in sequence.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
It
Like,
would, it would take a while.
yeah, yeah. So, thank you everybody so much for spending the time with us and looking at this virtual brown box. And remember it's thematic, so it's Neil Young. It's worth reading this book and checking it out. So please read Shaky by McDonough.
Yeah.
And it's a big book, but it's worth reading. It's probably one of the best biographies I've ever read of a
Yeah.
rock musician.
Me too.
And listen to On the Beach. That's my pick for one of my favorite Neil records.
The blues concept within this one sets this frame that I'm gonna move into some longer pieces.
Hmm.
Harvest pretty self-contained, just song length wise,
Yeah.
and you get the thing and you get in there and you get the vibe, but there were quicker things, and he could have done a whole career doing that and probably been more successful. I mean, he's never really been a mainstream, hit maker, but Harvest got him in that conversation,
Hmm.
where he sort of worship, certainly respected, but then to head towards the ditch
Hmm.
and sort of rely on his musicality, because his
Yeah.
guitar playing is it's like it's a whole other musical life.
Hmm.
He's a songwriter. He's this incredible lyricist that can capture so many lights of things. He does the
Yeah.
most with the most common chords that any songwriter
Yeah.
does. He can make
Yeah.
the most simple melody work at 1,000%, the most mileage out of
Hmm.
the simplest melodies. But then he's this very unusual guitar player
Yeah.
that, because of these extended blues songs, especially when you get in that second side, that like you say, they're like a mood. It's almost like it's like a move, three movements of one piece.
Hmm.
And it just sort of moves through. And I think maybe he was sort of discovering himself as this guitarist in an extended way, and
Hmm.
that he could carry on a conversation just using his guitar.
Yeah.
And he's really good at kind of flipping tones and stuff. I know Beck tries to do this too. He says, I'll have
Yeah.
an acoustic album. I've got my hip hop gig.
Yeah.
I've got, just my quirky stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, and then I'm going to reverse order and I'll go back.
Yeah.
So you can kind of almost guess what he'll do next, but not quite. But Neil
Yeah.
Young sort of set the pace for that. Is I'll do I'll do my Blue Notes album, and I'll do
Yeah.
my, and some people think that during that era that he was just doing it just to, get his record company mad at him and get him kicked off. But he
Yeah.
also really likes that music.
Yeah. Yeah. And he took it back with like a lot of that stuff. And it's interesting that one, like, they called him like the godfather of grunge. And it was like he really only made a couple records that would even sound like that. Right.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, even like closer to like when the grunge era started, like it was Ragged Glory, I think would be the closest thing to it. But then like he makes all these different records that are reflective of what he likes in that moment. In the 80s is especially like that. Like he makes a record called Trans, which is like very heavily influenced by Kraftwerk,
Yeah.
and which he was listening to a lot of that too. And then he made something called Everybody's Rockin',
Yeah.
which is like old
Rockabilly.
rockabilly
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but but the whole time he's surrounding himself with these like this high caliber of musicians.
Yeah.
So like a Miles Davis or a Zappa, like he has people like that have been playing with him for a long time, like Ben Keith, who on this record particularly he plays like pedal steel, and then he plays some other things. But that's one example. But then he has Crazy Horse, and then he has like horn players. But then he also does this thing where he makes musicians play other things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So one story I like from the going back to the book is like
Yeah.
Nils Lofgren shows up to Hollywood or to California looking for Neil because Neil saw him at a backstage show, right? On the East Coast and promised him a record deal. So Nils Lofgren shows up. He's a
Yeah.
guitar player. Neil asks him to play on his record. Neil says, "Okay, great. I'd love to play guitar." And Neil says, "No, you're going to play piano." And Neil's like, "I don't really play piano." And Neil's like, "Okay, great, great. That sounds
You're
good to me."
hired.
Like, Yeah, and so he does, like, but then he like does Southern Man, and that's like the one of the most memorable things in that song. Um, he does the same thing with James Taylor and Old Man, but the banjo.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, plays the band, doesn't even really know how to play the banjo.
yeah,
So it's like he puts people in these situations, but it's like it's all about what he's doing in that moment. Some
right.
could think it's selfish in the way he does his thing, but he very much serves the music. So I think it's all about the music. He hurts a lot of people's feelings, I'm sure, when he like cuts them. He just cuts and runs to the next thing.
Yeah.
But it's the whole time. It's like he's very consistent in that way.
With this album, it's just sort of typical how enters a zone,
Mm-hmm.
bringing this cast of characters with him, and then proceeds to get this kind of blanket of sound
Right.
and works the songs within that sphere. So
Yeah.
and then very willing to move on and past that because there's just something else to do, and that kind of wanderlust we talked about before, that little part about him that makes him want to move on and play with different people and do other kinds of music and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
These are good examples of how he sort of did it over time, and then in on the beach, just a good example of how he does it. What
Yep.
happens when he does this? Yeah.
But the coastal tour, like all the venues was all vegetarian food. It was all organic, and then all the beer was like local beer. And
Yeah.
so if you wanted a regular run of the mill beer, you weren't getting it. Yeah, if you wanted a beef burger, you weren't getting that. So it's like, and you knew he had a hand in that. It's
Yeah,
like
no, it's just
he just does. That's just what he does.
yeah,
I think it's great. I think it's great.
I do too. I just think that there's a handful of people who have earned that trust, earned an audience who will follow them to wherever that artist leads. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
different kind of relationship I think about
Yeah.
Neil Young, where they feel he is speaking to them
Uh huh.
or speaking for them,
Right.
and that we sort of earned that respect, earned that participation.
So I'm Ryan.
And I'm Chris.
And thank you so much for coming to Brown Box. See y'all next time.